is if you take an individual sport like endurance racing, powerlifting, weightlifting, anything else, the metrics are so repeatable that I can tie my progress to that. Now we've got an individual sport with changing metrics, and it's like this is super challenging to stay engaging and show progress year after year because there's so many variables that go into it now, and it's all just tied into you. You were there by yourself against a clock or against a bar or something else. So the joy is something that I think almost has to come more from the process than from the numbers that go into it, because the numbers are just, there's so much context that goes into them.
All right, Mike, 1 out of 10, or no, sorry, 1 to 5 spicy chilies. I already messed up the ranking system.
Can we do stars? Because to me, a chili is like, how hard was the open?
Okay,
do we want more chilies? More chilies good?
Yeah, you actually you could go 0 to 5 stars because you could give a 0-star review, I think.
I'm going to go with a 4-star.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's like a Michelin restaurant. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Perrin.
I'm gonna do a 4.1.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, we can do fractionals?
Yeah.
Okay. Decimals?
Adam?
3.7.
Okay.
Oof, I was going to say 3.5.
All right.
Is it worse than 3.7? What do you think?
3.5 is mathematically worse than 3.7.
I didn't know if you're going to agree with me.
Actual retail price is?
Whatever the audience says.
Yeah. Are we going to give context for our numbers or just leave it vague and just go into the talking?
I think we just go into the talking.
Yeah.
All right, fine.
All right,
we're just going to get hate on the comments.
we have a list of, we want to recap the open. So obviously the last several weeks we talked about each of the workouts individually, but we want to we have a list of bullet points. Thank you, Perrin. 26 of them to be exact. of talking points we wanted to go through to kind of recap the open as a whole. So big picture thoughts on the programming of all 3 tests kind of combined together instead of, attacking them individually. Thoughts on the organization of it, the delivery of some of the announcements, the inclusiveness of the workout design, and so forth. So let's just jump in with, I guess, we had a rating of what we thought, how it all went after 3 weeks. But I think talk a little more detail now on starting with what did it accomplish what we were looking for, what they were looking for the testing body?
Well, I think what we think they're looking for is really what we're commenting on, because it's not very clear what the actual purpose of what's the purpose of these workouts. Is the purpose to and they changed the payment structure too of the CrossFit Games just season. Now some of the money went back to affiliates. So we know hey, the affiliates are much bigger focus now of this thing. So is the purpose of the workouts just to make it fun and inclusive for the affiliates? Or is it supposed to be the testing to 1%, 2%, and as a sorting filter? I'm under the assumption that what is more important to them is the affiliate side. Just looking at the test, that's how I look at it now, which for me is part of why my ranking was a little lower, because I'm all right, I get that, and I understand we have to do it, but you also took away quarterfinals, and now masters athletes, for example, are basically sorting themselves straight through semifinals off of these 3 tests, which I don't feel properly encapsulated the sport side of it. So
semifinal athletes.
Yeah, true. Same thing. Yeah. I think it's a little bit more likely that, I guess, it's equally an issue, I think, there. So I feel like on the programming side, that's kind of where I was I don't want to be overly critical, because I'm just super grateful that we're here and the sport was still good and there was media, but also I was I just don't like that. And I don't feel like I could be authentic on a podcast and not just share that.
Yeah.
Well, if we assume that they were less prioritize or less emphasizing the sports side of things, and they were trying to really prioritize affiliate participation or even just class member participation, did they check that box?
So I think they checked the box in the way they perceive training. For me, I personally, and this has been, a thought process that you guys know I've been on, I think that if we're trying to serve the affiliate, which means that we're trying to serve the members of the affiliate, there should be some sort of testing that says, hey, you guys are getting fitter year over year from a quantifiable and measurable way. And I don't think the way that the open tests and the distribution of tests, we were talking before the podcast, if you're average affiliate member is getting capped on every workout, like mathematically. They did a 12, a 15, and a 20-minute long test in the open. So you're saying like, all right, well, endurance is way more important than strength overall, which I think as just like, if you look at health metrics and statistics, I'm not sure that's a appropriate way for you to give affiliate members like a structure for their testing year after year. So I would say personally, no, but I think from a community standpoint, like our people loved it and it was fun and they were really hard tests. So I think they satisfy part of it. They satisfy the like energy of the Friday night lights and letting everybody do it without these high level skills bottlenecking them, but maybe not from a like, hey, this is your philosophy of what fitness is. And from my analysis, you're not testing it, or at least that's how I see it.
I guess you could look at it from the standpoint of, all right, if the Open now is less about sorting elite athletes to go on to the next stage, and it's more about creating this annual test for members to see, how are we improving using the CrossFit methodology? Did it check that box? Can you do that in 3 tests, one test a week in a gym?
I don't know if you can do it with 3 scores.
Yeah.
I think that you might be able to do it with 3 tests and maybe like multiple scores inside of a week. I think that they probably think that they're checking the box with having 1 redo per year. Like you can show a little bit of test retest in terms of, did you get better with this specific skill set? But yeah, I don't know how much they necessarily care about this idea of quantifiable metrics that are repeatable over time. I think that what they care about as much as anything is constant participation over the course of years and years, which I think is good. I think it's good if you can have an event that maybe cares a little bit less about the metrics that you're testing versus just trying to keep somebody moving for a long period of time. I don't know how. It's always been unknown and unknowable. It's always been a little bit closer to random versus just varied. And I think if you approach it like that, if you can just get somebody to sort of like grab them and incentivize them to come into the gym a little bit more often, whether you're actually testing the same thing over and over and over, I think that they could probably convince themselves that they did a good job of it. This Open was always going to be a challenge for them. Like coming off of last year, like this Open was always going to be compromised in terms of participation numbers and like just outside judgment that they had to face. So even though there was a huge drop off in registration and there was a lot of people that sort of like protested by doing the workouts without actually registering. I still think that they probably did what they set out to do, if I'm being honest.
I mean, like, what's the best it could have done?
Like if you're trying to think about success from their point of view, like it was always going to be hard to like label this year as a success. But if you think about what they were probably trying to get away with, I think that they probably got close to their own number.
I mean, I think from the perspective of, was it a fun challenge for members? Did they enjoy the workouts? And here, yes, I know that experience is not going to be the same at every gym, but here participation and engagement was really high. When I say, we'll talk about this more too, I think it's a topic worth kind of discussing. Participation with Friday Night Lights. That's not the same as signing up and actually doing the Open. Can't force people to do that. But I think all the members, it seemed like the majority thoroughly enjoyed them. And I feel like that box was checked for sure, which is why my rating was like a little bit higher. Which is a very important component because that does drive participation. If you had the same test every year because you're so focused on the measurables, the repeatables, it could just burn people out and make them a little bit bored with it.
You think so? I mean, but like high rocks and endurance sports and powerlifting, weightlifting, I feel like exceed participation versus CrossFit. Like I do, well, maybe in the CrossFit space, more people want the like constant change of the testing body, but I think some repeatability would engage people. Like I know on that second workout, the people that did better, it like totally changed their whole perception of everything. They're like, oh man, I cut 2 minutes off. And I think having some data to say like, yeah, you're getting fit is motivating. Not if the tests every year were exactly the same.
That's what I was saying.
That would turn a lot lot of off. Because part of why we do it is because it's fun and
why
it
they're
changes.
attracted to the
I mean, if
sport.
25.2 came out again next year, people would be like, ugh.
Yes.
But
So there's a balance to
I
it.
think that's why he picked a workout that was only done 3 years ago. It was enough time for people to make change, but it's not so old that you have people that aren't participating in the sport actually repeating it.
Because the current stars did it in 2022.
Exactly. But I think that the whole gamification of a leaderboard is what engages people. But if you're comparing rankings, for instance, like I've gone through a lot of my clients' rankings and I'm like, it's not apples to apples because there's so much less participation. So how many people aren't you're competing against a different field every year, basically.
Yeah. I've seen some media people saying that basically, like, you always have this chance to measure up, but you're only measuring up to the relative pool of participants.
Yep.
So then it becomes really hard when you're coaching people or trying to keep them engaged, and they're like, oh, I'm 1,000 places better. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not, you might not actually be 1,000 places better, because there's however many tens of thousands or 100,000 less people just you're competing against. So yeah.
Not to mention it's 3 different workouts. Yeah. I mean, I gave a similar ranking to Mike, basically the same, but I tried to outdo you with the 0.1. But for similar reasons, like everyone made their vote on whether or not they wanted to participate in the Open before any of the workouts came out. So you can't change that. And so I think what you're trying to do is hopefully change that for next year and create more engagement. So if you put on a successful competition, and all our definitions of that's going to be different, you create opportunity for next year. People being like, I actually really enjoyed Friday Night Lights with my community. I didn't sign up this year, but I'm going to sign up next year. And I thought, I don't know if I'd say the programming was perfect by any means, but I think the logistics were fairly simple for the most part. They tested different movements, different time domains, depending on the athlete participating. And I thought there was like pretty good engagement this year, and people enjoyed the workouts.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that the things that we heard that like were a general consensus, I guess, amongst the community were, one, the masters scaling adjustments. That seemed like a very popular sentiment that people disagreed with.
The 55 plus masters.
The 55 plus masters scaling. What were the others that we had?
The removal of quarterfinals.
Quarterfinals.
I think that, and again, like, I mean, probably in a little bit of a bubble. I know some people have commented on that. Like, you guys are dealing with like the tip of the spear, but we're around the competitive scene. So we know the people that go to TFX and Wadapalooza, and there's a huge portion of like either up and coming athletes or more serious athletes that when you go from, 75th percentile or 90th percentile to like, okay, now you got to be in the 99th percentile. You have some very, very good athletes that are cut out. And if you make the workouts more participatory, it's like, well, they developed fitness in a broad and inclusive way better overall, but you tested just this one little kind of style, and maybe that part of their fitness isn't as good. But I think the sentiment was, if you had the cut to 90% or the cut to 75th percent, then all of those things can get worked out when you have a more broad subset of tests than you put in the Open. So I think people were just kind of upset by that. And I think it actually stopped participation, because some people were like, well, whatever, I'm not going to be in the top 1%. I don't care. I'm just going to work on something else in the season.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think there was consideration of the balance? Like, well, we're probably going to piss off the elites on this at the high end of those masters divisions, but it's okay because we're trying to make it more inclusive to the full masters 55 plus community, to hopefully let the workouts feel less aggressive or intense or intimidating to get more in.
Yeah, it's like more for the masters affiliate person than the masters athlete in the sport. Yeah. But I think you solve the problem if the cut line is just lower, because like then it's like, all right, cool. Like the testing wasn't super well rounded, but in the next stage, you're going to get all your things. You're going to get the skills.
Outside of nitpicking the testing, I think that if we try and, again, go back to what it is that they're wanting to accomplish on like a global level, like they want as much participation and registration as possible year after year. And so I would have a hard time justifying removing a cut line that's really appealing and incentivizing for people. Like, what we saw here is there's a lot of people that want to do the workouts, but they had no interest in registering, because having 1% or 2% as the only goal available, the only way to qualify, it's like, why would I do that? Why would I pay for that?
Yeah.
So you got people doing workouts in fragmented communities because they like the energy here, but they're not participating at the global level because they took that out. So not only are you like basically like telling the elites like, hey, listen, this is your first stage of the competition. It's going to be really hard. We're throwing everybody on this leaderboard. But also that chunk of people on the bubble that were incentivized by either top 10% or top 25%, you're also not incentivizing them to do it year after year.
I will say I think they tried to solve that by adding the Community Cup and the pairs competition, but I personally don't feel like there's been a lot of engagement. Like I don't really even know what's entailed.
I don't even know the details.
Yeah, I was just going to say that
but I think
too,
that it like that's the issue when you introduce something new again. Like it's going to take time to pick up steam if it even does. So I just don't think that was carried out very well.
And also, I mean, I got to be fair that like they had a lot of other issues to be dealing with than marketing something new, but also just the marketing of that. Like, you know, we have the affiliate here. We didn't have a lot of information on what the affiliate on what that community cup was to be able to tell people like, hey, this is something. So if we don't know, how are we going to be able to promote it to other people? So I feel like if you're going to roll something out like that, you need like
a long
months
time.
of lead time to be like, hey, we're removing quarterfinals. This is coming in. This is why it's going to be exciting. This is why we made the change. But I know that's not like modus operandi for them to like.
Well, they could also leverage the community. Like they could use camps or street parking and other organizations that have a lot of those types of people and ask them to participate or use them as marketing for that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, outside of nitpicking the details of the programming, I'd like to see a little bit more incentivification for the affiliate owners to get their people to register, because I think that's how you drive it as much as possible. Like you can try and get it at the athlete level with qualification levels and maybe different team setups and stuff, but right now the affiliate owners, from my point of view, they don't have a ton of incentives to tell their people to register. They're not getting much out of it anymore. I don't know what the payback was for the affiliates, that they're getting money back from the registration fees.
They're not getting money back from registration fees. There was a prize for the highest performing affiliates.
Oh, okay.
Like they changed Dave Castro did like a weekend review, and came out prior to the Open, but it was like a spreadsheet that basically said like, based on the number of registrants that go into the games, that money is being distributed. I think half of it was put towards the game's prize purse. And then this year specifically, some of that money was literally put towards some sort of affiliate competition. And when I looked at it, I was like, all right, well, like, yeah, this is incentivizing for the 10 gyms that have a lot of people that are like hyper competitive.
But nobody passed that.
Yeah. But it's like after that, there's not really that much of an incentive if you know that that's not what your gym is all about.
Yeah. I think if I'm HQ, I think my goal going into next year is to try and leverage the energy of the old Open announcements and to try and get myself to talk to the affiliate owners in a way that's much more incentivizing and encouraging and motivating for them to get their members to sign up. I don't know what that looks like, but aside from the programming and all the stuff which we love to talk about, I feel like that's the way to try and take all these fragmented communities like our Friday Night Lights, which the energy was awesome, and try and just make it like build on itself and expand and then get more interconnected back together. Yeah. It's a huge task to have, especially coming off of last year. But right now, like I feel like the energy is still there. It's just, it's fragmented is what it feels like.
Yeah. It's got to require, I think, collaboration, because you can't just say like, well, the elites aren't important in this. Yeah. Because if you really go back to when, like, I mean, the affiliates were, you know, more flourishing than they were. I don't think it was on like its super steepest up curve during the like peak of the sport. But I feel like the athletes were super excited about and it was organic because they weren't getting paid to do it then either, but they wanted to do it. Then they had the people in the gyms wanting to do it with them. So it was kind of like, hey, this is this awesome, exciting, competitive time. And now a lot of them are like, oh, we got to do this. Like, why are we doing this? And I do think that's kind of part of the issue is like, we got to bring the affiliate owners and people that are concerned with just making their members healthy and the tip of the spear competitors, which isn't just games athletes. I think like anybody in the top 1%, people that just train seriously to race in fitness, whether it's High Rocks or CrossFit or these competitions, and figure out how to build the system for both groups equally and like incentivizing both groups somehow, which I don't know. It's hard when you try to build something that like properly satisfies.
Yeah, you have a lot of conflicting opinions because you have, you know, the idea that, well, we need to branch out, we need to grow in a new way to make it more inclusive, to consider the fact that the lower barrier to entry allows for more people to come in, the movement selection in High Rocks as an example, versus all the diehards, the OGs that want the Open the way it used to be. And that means with harder workouts, with all of these elements that made it really exciting. But I just think that time has passed. I don't think you're getting new people in the door now if you've got handstand push-ups and 225 squat snatches in the workout.
You won't grow it at that point.
Yeah. I mean, you'll still maintain the interest of some of the originals, but I think it's just, I think that's kind of, that ship has sailed.
Yeah. Even with a lens for simplicity, though, do you think that the testing, in your opinion, you were pretty quiet on it, like, for example, they're not having a strength test for a general member base, or not having a test that's under 12 minutes long for like the original, like even in the CrossFit for 100 words is like, one of the things is I think keep workouts short. Like it's part of the ethos, and Fran and Grace and all these things done are usually scaled to be real fast, explosive tests. And we miss on that a lot, I feel. I do think, though, the community might be pissed if it was like just a 2-minute workout in the open by itself.
I think there could be a creative way where it's a 2-part score. It goes into something else. So it's, there's definitely ways to do it. Again, it's easy to say, like, you miss something short, and it's like, well, you got to look at the whole big picture, scoring, setup, movements, all that stuff. So I get that. I haven't actually spent that much time to go through it, but I am disappointed that there isn't some form of a heavier strength element for several reasons. One, on the sorting of the elites moving on to the next stage, because now you have some athletes that they did the open, they crushed it, and they're super impressive, but now semifinals have announced that they're going to have 30 squat snatches at 225, 155, and I'm like, there's such a gap there, you know.
Somebody's not going to even be able to lift it once.
Yeah, but members like to lift. They like to be challenged. They work year round to try and improve their strength metrics, and doing it in a Friday Night Lights setting. I'm not saying that the lifts need to be under fatigue in an unsafe way. If you're trying to make it more inclusive and less intimidating, you could still test it in a fun way. So I don't know if like the removal of it was because of that reason. So I don't know. I would just like some insight into that, because it's been a couple years now.
Yeah. The other thing with the absence of a strength lift is I feel like it's a number that is very, very easy to repeat and show progress on.
Yeah.
If that's what you want, like you want people signing up year after year, show them they're getting stronger. It's the easiest thing to do. Like it's really fun to write different novel mixed modal workouts. Like that's cool and exciting, and it's fun to try new things, but to show somebody they got heavier on their deadlift, heavier on their squat, heavier on their bench press, like it's cool and it's easy, and it's a number that people can wrap their heads around really easily. I got stronger 3 years from what I did in the past.
Yeah, and I think I said this in one of the previous episodes, but the tests, your training is a product of the most recent tests that you do, and I think moving forward now people will feel less pressured to emphasize strength for those that are just like doing the open.
Yeah, and
I think the same thing with like the simplification of some of the Masters 55 plus scale. Now there's less incentive to actually work on inverted, handstand abilities, and trying to maintain mobility and, overhead flexion as you age. I think it like, all right, well, we know that they're kind of lowering the bar on that a little bit, so the pressure is just not the same.
Yeah. Which I think if that's the case, because we didn't even do wall walks in training 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It came out in the open with that wall walk double under test, and everyone was like, all right, I guess
there's 45 of them.
Yeah. Then it came out at the games again, and then people were like, oh, it's never going to come out. And now it's like, all right, it's here. So like now everyone's doing wall walks. You can't, even if you thought this movement is stupid, you cannot. It was like, I know that back in the day, people were like, GHDs are unsafe and this and that. And I'm like, all right, but like if you're competing in a test that's going to do 150 of them for time under fatigue, then either you just do them or you don't. Like you can't not do them and train for them. Damn it, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I was going to say, you have to build resilience around training that movement.
Yeah, I mean, I went off on a brain tangent.
I think you have to learn to build resilience around that movement if it's going to be something tested in the sport. And I don't know. There's an element to that in the sport where it's like, this is a movement that's very difficult to do in a high in high volume. How do we figure out a way to, one, like improve your movement quality to actually do it under fatigue eventually, but then two, like to layer on volume with that. So you simplify the movements, and then it takes away the pressure where it's like, all right, well, that bucket's just getting like smaller, and again, now we're only focusing on just like improving like raw capacity and simple movements all the time.
It's like muscle stamina and cardiovascular fitness. Like if you prioritize those two things, then you can become top 1% in the sport, but you not really be top 1% in the sport if you just put like one strength thing or one high level skill thing in that same body.
I've heard that argument so many times. Just the dilution and the simplicity of the workouts takes away the incentive for people to want to get better. Like even people that you get smashed by it, you get exposed, and if it's not tested, again, you have no incentive to work on it. But even to go back to the argument for the strength test, how many more PRs do we see in class of people PRing lifts over a gymnastics movement? Like we all love seeing a first ring muscle up, first bar muscle up, great. but it's definitely the strength stuff because there's more things to choose from. It's a huge part of everyone's programming. They usually start with it. It's usually half of their program. And so if it's not tested, I think you miss out on opportunity for a lot of PRs. Even that workout with the burpee pull-ups and the thrusters, how many people either PR their cleans or their thrusters there. So I think there's definitely an opportunity missed, but I will say logistically I could create an argument where this just gets a little bit messy of like, we only have so many plates and so many weights. We only can run as many people as possible. But if it's built in kind of with a rest or even, I mean, that changes the test, but
I mean, you can't test a deadlift in a class, but most people, if you did like a power clean or whatever, like the weights that a general class is using is not like what we're used to. Yes, it would be very hard in a group of elites to do a max power clean because you'd probably run out of plates. But I don't think in most classes that would happen.
Yeah, I hear you, and I also think the same argument for a rower. You know, people have more access to bars and plates than a gym does with
that's true.
20 rowers to run 20 people at once, you know.
Yeah.
What were our actual bullet points? Are we still on bullet point 1?
We've covered a bunch
get
of
there.
them. I mean,
we just went like this on all of them.
The second one was workout analysis and just testing validity, like as a whole.
Yeah.
Did it measure the 3 workouts represent well-rounded fitness?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been, I love training, and the ideology of CrossFit from like the hopper model, the multi-energy systems model, having strength and capacity built in gymnastics and strength, and like that kind of, hey, we're testing fitness according to this ethos is really important to me personally. And I think it's a cool, like, differentiating variable about what CrossFit is relative to all of the other fitness things out there. So when the tests don't align with that, it really, like, rubs me raw. Like, the fact that it's like, why? Like, this is your test, and you have your own definition of this thing that you're not testing. So, like, without strength in that, I don't really like, that's where my lower ranking personally comes from. But I think the tests as a whole were still just like fun and good enough to sort overall. Like, it's like, all right, cool. Like the best 1% or 2%, like you still got to be good at all this stuff. And it's like good enough. I do think the Masters Plus thing was a big weakness. And I think there are components of each test, like the walking lunge being unloaded as an example.
Mike's so happy it came back up.
I had to bring it back up. Yeah. But I mean, again, it's like, I know now I need to like sometimes let that idealism go away. And it's like, all right, it's practical. It's like, this is for the affiliate. But I don't personally think the tests were well-rounded enough. And I think it's caused people to have to do now like emotional damage control with their athletes sometimes that are competing in the sport. It's like, all right, yeah, like if you didn't perform as well, or even in the opposite direction, there's people that did so well on the leaderboard where I'm like, all right, like keep yourself in check because you just did well on a bunch of really simple, really light Metcons. And you're like, when you get to semis or when you get to these other places, like it's going to be a rude awakening. And I just personally like, maybe I needed to do some emotional regulation before I came into the podcast, but that was my, like my frustration with them.
Yeah.
Man, kind of a tangent here, but I feel like because of the new 1%, 2% marks, I feel like this year was a larger battle than ever. And this is kind of a common theme in CrossFit as a sport or fitness sports is more athletes focusing on putting the energy into the thought of, am I good enough to do this versus actually playing the sport? Like they're so distracted from the comparison game so often. And I just don't feel like I've ever witnessed that or seen that as prevalent in other sports. And I've had so many conversations with athletes regarding that of like, how can we get you to just like, stop tying your self-worth to all that comparison and like remove that so you can actually enjoy and use competition as an opportunity to express your joy in training and actually go and have fun and play the sport that brings you joy instead of it being this just like emotional, like distraught experience all the time.
Yeah. It's hard though, because the measurement is, I think, what motivates most people. It's like, all right, I want to be good. I want to be the best. I want to make this thing. And that is a motivating pursuit for people. But I do agree.
But that's there in other sports too. Like you want to reach a high level, you want to make varsity, or you want to, make a AAA team. Like that's there too. But I feel like in fitness sports, maybe social media, like so much external pressure just dilutes it and I see less people playing it for joy instead of it just being like this constant measurement of self-worth.
Yeah, I think it's also commentary on individual sports versus team sports. I think if you look at a lot of other individual sports, the metrics are very, very repeatable, and it's very easy to show progress. Other team sports, like it's real easy for me to go out on Sundays and play soccer.
Yeah.
Whether I win or lose, it has no judgment on me. It's a team sport. I went out there, I had fun, I tried my best. I might have messed up, my teammate might have messed up. It didn't take away the fun for me because I go out there for the group aspect of it. The individual side of things is if you take an individual sport like endurance racing, powerlifting, weightlifting, anything else, the metrics are so repeatable that I can tie my progress to that. Now we've got an individual sport with changing metrics, and it's like this is super challenging to stay engaging and show progress year after year because there's so many variables that go into it now, and it's all just tied into you. You were there by yourself against a clock or against a bar or something else. So the joy is something that I think almost has to come more from the process than from the numbers that go into it, because the numbers are just, there's so much context that goes into them.
Yep.
There are a lot of people that I think do find joy in the process.
Yeah.
But then when the competition comes around,
where'd the joy go?
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden it's not joy, it's just sadness.
Yeah. I had good experiences with athletes in the Open, but I think I had more of that this year from people that compete more seriously. And like, I had a bunch of talks with people that are in the Masters group within TTT Compete that are like, you know, not questioning everything, but it feels like they pull it all. It's like, hey, dude, this is just like one score on one workout, one competition. Like, yes, maybe you can learn something from it. Maybe something went wrong in training, but just like chill, relax, get a perspective of the big picture, actually look at and evaluate your training. And like, if you're like, well, I PR'd 4 lifts, I PR'd 3 energy system tests, I retested 5 things from previous Opens and improved all of them. And you have all this evidence. It's like people can just like squash it, not focus on it, and focus on that one data point to ruin their whole perspective. And I've been fighting that battle with people a lot this year, seemingly more than previous years.
I mean, that's just what the nature of the business,
every year.
because it changes. And,
you think that's more this year too?
I mean, yeah, just because the rules changed again, and you know,
I don't actually think it's more this year. I feel like it's
like recency bias.
You're saying the conversation,
I feel like it's similar to other years, but the context is different. Like obviously, when the goalpost moves, I think everyone gets frustrated because we can't have one year that's the same. That's annoying. Yeah. But even going back to your point with other sports, like there are even team sports where at the highest level, the selection is up to the bias of a coach selecting you for the team. Like I've coached some rowers before that, you know, you have time trials where you're going against people you're competing for a spot in the boat. You might actually beat them on the time trial, but the coach thinks that somebody else is a better fit for the team. Right. And that happens all the time, even subjective sports like gymnastics and figure skating. I think there's other ones where there's an artistic element there.
Yeah, I mean, it happens in like football too.
What if
like
25.4 was a character test? In
So I think even with this sport, like there is objective data, so it feels black and white. But the fact that the tests change every year, the amount of people you're competing against, who you're competing against change, standards, like the change is what I think creates anxiety because you can't prepare for it until it's established. And like, even if the Open, even if it was still unknown, but there was like, okay, these are the movements that we're going to select this year. And like, these are the general floor plans. Like there's going to be 30 feet of something. Like just shrinking things down to a little bit more known, I think would give people time to prepare, or even just releasing the rule book maybe a little bit earlier.
Imagine being a decathlete and you know what your bread and butter is on certain events, and then all of a sudden the next year they're like, we're removing the mile run. Like we're not going to test that anymore. But not telling you.
Yeah. Or telling you when you sign up.
And like that skews your strengths and weaknesses, right? So I feel like that was exactly what happened this year or in previous years. Like if you have this expectation that maybe 1 out of 4 or 5 scores is going to be a strength lift where it skews things a little bit. It changes how you train and approach things. So I don't know. I feel like we're kind of beating a dead horse on
Yeah.
that. but-
On a positive note, from
Yeah.
a testing
Yeah.
body
What went well.
perspective, there was, yeah.
We got 2 minutes left.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I think there was squatting and pulling, in which I think it's good to, like, there were some opens I feel like that had 4 squat tests and no pulling, for example. And I think having a distribution of that, there was a single leg on your lower body, even though it was Adam's favorite.
Big separator.
There was upper body pulling, and there was upper body. I get this isn't like upper body pressing. It's more like straight arm strength, but I still think straight arm strength in pressing. You had a monostructural element. You did have your MGW all checked. So I do think there is some variation and some overall, from a movement selection standpoint, they tacked a lot of different styles of movements. And I think like having burpees and double unders still within the, I know double unders weren't like a big separator, but I think those have seemed to be something that has been like all the way from the beginning. And I do like that we have some like thrusters, pull-ups, burpees, double unders. I think if you make a qualifier and it's like, I know there was like a qualifier recently with like double unders where you had to jump forward and bound. And I think that can get, like, I understand the unknown and unknowable, but when you start doing that, I think it can make it very hard for engagement without people having time to practice, see a new skill. So I think that would be my biggest win from a movement perspective, or from a programming perspective, is that there was enough movement variation that you checked a lot of the boxes of just, if you wanted to say, hey, you move well, that we did a lot of different types of movements that are important to the fundamentals of CrossFit.
Yeah.
I think it was accessible. I think
Yeah.
the tests were accessible for newer people, for people who don't have a ton of experience in the sport, who don't have big strength numbers or don't have the high complexity gymnastics, the way that they build in the increasing complexity of that one test. So I think that they checked that box well.
Speaking of that, somebody called me out in a comment, and I didn't look at the leaderboard, but like 50th percentile athletes on workout number 2, where were people, like, how long was it taking them to get to the point that they would just not be doing muscle ups? Anyone have some sort of prediction on that?
Oh, like where did they stop in the workout?
Yeah, because I said, I think in the podcast, and like not everything is super well thought out. Sometimes you're just talking on a podcast, but I think I said something like you're standing there for 5 minutes or
I have
something.
a couple of masters athletes who don't have bar muscle ups yet, and their tie break time for that one I think was around the 7-minute mark.
Okay, yeah. So there was like 5 plus minutes, but maybe not they're pretty well-rounded, good masters athletes.
Picture a good open athlete. Like the engine's really good.
Yeah.
It's just that one skill isn't quite there yet for various reasons.
So then a class person would probably be closer to like getting there. Like
7 to 8 to 9 minute workout still. So
yeah. So I guess it's not as it's more to guess just for like elites. Anyways,
another thing in the what went well category that we haven't talked about, it's not about programming, it's the workout announcements, which I think creating a lot of buzz, especially week 1, is super important. And I think you said something about a stat of like how many people tuned in this year versus last year.
I was wrong.
Also call it out.
Yeah.
I thought
another thing I was wrong about. I put it on my list.
But either way, I thought those were better this year.
Yeah.
I personally thought like they kind of like got straight to the point. Having Rich and Mayhem do the first one I thought was super appropriate. I personally would like to see male and female every week, because I think that helps with getting an idea of the workout. But I will also say I think week 3, with just like the rivalry between those 3, was like absolutely the most entertaining.
Yeah. I agree. What was who did workout 2 in person?
It was Sydney Wells and Emily Rolfe.
Oh yeah. I would say the 1 and 3 were probably the most engaging. It did seem just the production value was like way up. The stat that I miscalculated, apparently after the season is over, they clip out parts of 24.1, for example, and then make a new YouTube video out of it. So when I searched 24.1, I wasn't actually looking at the full live stream data. I was looking at the recut of 0.1. And I had this long back and forth with Chris about it. But so I don't know if the statistics were up like I had originally said in the call. Somebody said, no, they're still down, but I don't know by how much. It still seemed like there was like hundreds. It was like almost 500,000 people watching. So that's a lot.
Yeah, I think,
or more than
I think 0.2 might have been down too, just because it was a repeat. And like, I mean, guilty here as well. Like as soon as it came out, I was like, pull up the 22.3 stuff. Like let's get to work on that.
Oh, look, it's me and Brandon.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So anything else that went well? I mean, the energy in the affiliate was awesome, but I don't think I can't attribute that to HQ. I feel like that I could attribute that to like our coaches for, taking the effort to do that and be here, and the members coming and wanting to be part of it. And I feel like every year, if you can develop a community of people to come together and compete, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's part of the reason why I think the Open has had a lot of success over the years.
Yeah, I'll be curious to hear if there's solutions to incentivize it, because for us, it's more about creating these community-based events in our affiliate that we do like on a quarterly basis. So we do like the Summer Sizzler, we do the Winners Coming Classic, we do Chad, we do Murph. Like we always come up with these fun ideas. And this year it was more about putting emphasis on, hey, Friday Night Lights is just 3 weeks. We've got 3 different sponsors that are run or supported by members of the gym. They have their small businesses that they do to support it. And it's just like we have themes each week. So to me, like that is just like, it's a community event separate from what the Open's doing. Obviously we participate and have people sign up, but it's hard when someone says, well, why do I do that? Coaches don't have ammunition on that yet. So I think I'd like to see like what some solutions are for that, because I do want it to be more supportive in that way.
Yeah. I think the positive is if you're looking down from HQ and seeing all of this like sort of ground level energy, like you know that there's still things out there, like things that you can try and take advantage of. So at least it's encouraging that they can look down and say like, hey, the sport's not dying. It's just that we got to figure out how to bring everything back together, because the communities themselves, they might be isolated and fragmented, but the energy is still there. Their passion is still there for the sport. So I think that should be an encouraging sign. Yeah.
I also think it was hype because Max did 25.3.
What a mistake.
Max was hyped.
Oh, man.
That was a lot of adrenaline.
Yeah. What else you got, Perrin?
Areas for improvement, which I think we've kind of touched on throughout the whole conversation. Program we've talked about, athlete experience and support. I mean, the quality of the Open announcements, communication. I mean,
hold on. One areas for improvement.
Yeah.
We got to stop the leaks. There's got to be some sort of a better way to stop that, because you can't have an unknown and unknowable sport where huge numbers of people know the workout that are part of some inner circle.
I don't know. I feel like I have a theory that there was intentional like miscommunication put out there to create buzz, because it did make people talk about it. I'm not.
But some of the information was true. Oh, you mean like they would leak false stuff and true stuff and just like purposefully push it out? All right. I'm on to you guys. That's a little smarter.
Some people have said that they're not smart enough to do something like that. But I mean, if you are, like, the leaks got worse as the weeks went on, right? And it seemed like everybody knew 25.2 was going to come out at some point, whether it be week 2 or 3.
Yeah. So I had a thought about this. I was like, maybe I'll say this on the podcast and you guys could shit on it or not if it's a bad idea. But I think the Open announcement workout should come out on Monday, and they should do the announcement with all the standards. And then on Thursday, there should be a password or something for videos and stuff to have to go. So that way, any of the logistic issues, spacing issues, leak issues can all kind of be a little bit more alleviated. And I think it would also set up, if you want media to come out, every group that's in the space, like Mayhem, us, Krieger, like any group that has media can put out like, oh, we had multiple people test them. Here are scores. Here's what we said. And it could create the buzz for them. I just don't like the idea of it coming out and then knowing for sure, like, well, some people have had this for days, so they've been practicing it.
So it'd come out on Monday, and then Thursday there'd be a password?
Yeah, well, and now that I said that, I'm going to shit on my own idea. Yeah, it is stupid. You've been waiting to come back on me.
It didn't even matter what he said. That's stupid. That's dumb.
I was waiting for my revenge.
Yeah, I know. You got it. There
I guess the
in the Open, there's no videos now, so you can't do that.
You do a password to enter your score.
Oh, yeah, password to enter your score.
Yeah.
The leaks at this stage of competition, I don't care as much about. It's the leaks at the upcoming stages of competition that really bother me. Like the people, like if there's demo teams and the athletes are spreading the workouts or the setups or like what the standards are on the box step overs for Chads.
Yeah.
That's where it bothers
At
me.
the professional level.
Where the separation of little things from somebody who got access to the workout or the equipment or something else for the people who are making it a professional sport, that's where it bothers me. If I heard a different leak on Reddit versus what you heard on Instagram and I beat you because we were working out next to each other in the gym, that doesn't really bother me as much. In the sport itself, those leaks, I feel like you're never going to get around them. I think that it's like there's going to be things that come out. So what I would love to see at the competitive level is, I would almost say 2 weeks out from a competition, everything's out there. Give everybody an equal opportunity chance to be able to test these workouts ahead of time. This is my bias because I think that, one, I don't think that the ability to be able to see something new right away, 30 seconds later, and be able to go do it is necessarily like one of the quantifiable metrics of fitness. I actually think you get a better measure of fitness if you let somebody play with it. I think you get better races from having somebody play around with different rep schemes and approaches and movements. I think that the sport itself is probably going to get more exciting. I think you're going to get better races if you give people these tests ahead of time. So the unknown and unknowable aspect of the sport, I think you get ahead of the leaks if you set a timeline ahead of time. All right, we're 2 weeks out from a competition. You guys know everything you're going to do. There's no surprises here. The movement standards are out. Everybody's clear on everything. We don't have to sit through 2 hours of briefing because of all these questions.
Yeah, you kind of iron out all the kinks in that process as well. People can ask questions well ahead of time.
Yeah, I think it's a better test of fitness. I think you get a better picture of somebody's fitness if they're able to play around with it a little bit more.
Yeah,
I agree. And also, I think you get the judges a better opportunity to watch people do it and maybe bring issues upstream to the event organizer, like, hey, we need to change this standard a little bit because it's not clear and there's too much ambiguity. But those things happen on the competition
on
floor.
The floor.
And then sometimes
heats.
after, in the heat, they're like, oh, you can't do this. I'm like, but they just did that.
Yeah.
You literally just let that person on the floor do it. They're like, well, they gamed it. And I'm like, well, you should have tested better.
The other thing that goes with that is if you give everybody the workouts ahead of time, all of those things come out ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like we can we do this? Can we do this? Here's the standards. Here's a demo. We know what the times are going to be. I think the races improve. The nepotism or favoritism of people who are on the inside who get this information, that goes completely away. All of a sudden, we've got a sport that's more equal opportunity. It's more egalitarian. That's what it was supposed to be. I don't think unknown and unknowable in terms of the movements or the tests is necessary to define who's fittest.
It bridges the gap between all of our complaints about this sport not being professional. Like every other sport, it's the same thing tested over and over again. And that's the issue. And I think that was the appeal back in the day. And I do think, I will say, a lot of games athletes like that. They like when workouts aren't being announced. But are they the athletes that have done well in those events because they were able to capitalize on that? But what about the ones that were burned by not knowing it?
Yeah, they hate it.
Yeah, right? So I think it is also influenced by your experience and what's happened to you and what the events were.
Yeah, it also is like if there's new equipment stuff and you're sponsored by Rogue, for example, like you might have access to see what some of that stuff is. Or you have a title sponsor who happens, or a main sponsor who happens to be a title sponsor of the event that's getting an understanding of where the floor plans are, what the fields look like, so they get a jump off point. So it's only the illusion that they're faster at adapting to things. Because if you have a little bit of an understanding of what you're going to be tested upon or tested on, you can practice that stuff. And I think the hopper model is something very important to CrossFit. It's like, okay, we put all these skills into something, we pull it out, and the people that can just do all that stuff better are better athletes or more fit. I think 2 weeks is still a reasonable amount of time to say, if you can learn a skill and do it fast and efficiently in 2 weeks, you're a freaking damn good adaptable athlete, because any real high level skill takes years to cultivate. So if somebody's adapting in 2 weeks, it's still checking that box, in my opinion, personally.
Yeah, I think the hopper model is so damn cool theoretically. I think in practice is where it bites us in the ass. I think the idea of having something that's random that nobody knew ahead of time, like literally when they put things into a hopper and pulled it out, that was really cool. Now unknown and unknowable is just who did you know? Who did you know? And what did you know ahead of time?
Yeah.
And I hate that idea. Of it.
How much was known?
Right.
I love that idea for competitions and professional sport, the professional side of it. That doesn't apply to the Open though.
Yeah. No, that's why the leaks in the Open, they don't really bother me as much, because I think that at the sport level, there's less on the line, especially if they're just saying 1% and 2%, check that box and get through. But
That, and I just think the element of the announcement, like, because then it would just ruin the announcement process.
Have
and
the excitement
that is
there.
what
have,
is
have
exciting each week, not knowing what's going to come up. So
that's cool, because I think you need it for the announcement, for the engagement.
Exactly.
So my dumb idea that you crapped on would still be okay for that, because people would still tune in for the
I
announcement.
actually like your idea.
No, it's still dumb.
Yeah. I like your idea, except nothing about it. Yeah.
I like everything about nothing about your
I
idea.
mean, I do think it's really hard to keep those things secret for that long. I mean, you have to test these workouts. So you have to have a team. You have to have it. You have to rehearse the broadcast. Like, there's a lot of steps to keeping those things very secretive. I mean, but also, like, they had athletes test the workouts. And I think Dave said something like, when Dallin and all them are doing 9-10 minutes on that workout, and he was like, I was not expecting that, because the people we had tested it were nowhere even close to that.
And maybe on CZU rowers.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Hey, we got called out for being petty.
I know.
Yeah.
And then Kyle defended himself.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe the Open is the test that is unknown and unknowable, and then as you get more professional, it needs to become more knowable ahead of time, because you need to iron out all those things.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not really unknown and unknowable in the Open. You know that, like, the movements are going to be done in affiliate.
Yeah.
So you kind of already have the movements whittled down.
Did they give an equipment list this year for the Open?
I didn't
I don't
see
feel
one.
like I saw one.
No, I didn't see one.
Nor have I seen one for semis. Yeah.
Yeah. They did floor plans in the past for quarterfinals.
Yeah, but they would come out on like Monday, right?
The week of.
Yeah.
But I feel like that could be the same thing for workouts.
Yeah.
You know?
They
or
did equipment lists.
They did equipment list
Yeah.
way in advance last
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
All right.
What's next?
The
What's
la-
the 38th bullet point?
Yeah, it's like the last one's just kind of, what is the future of the Open? Do we have any creative solutions and suggestions to improve next year if we were in charge?
Yeah, I think that if I'm running the Open next year for the next 5 years, I want consistency in the structure above everything. I want to know. I want the people who are participating, or the people that I want to participate, to know exactly what the demands on them are going to be, what the expectations are going to be, what qualification is going to look like, what the movement list is going to look like. We need consistency. I think if you want consistency in terms of either the testing body for qualification in the next stages, or consistency in participation, you need to stop changing things. Just find a structure that works year after year, stick with it as much as you can. I think you remove that uncertainty, and all of a sudden, the class members who are doing these workouts and they're isolated little fragments, they're more likely to sign up for your bigger thing, because you stop changing everything. So I think consistency with either quarterfinals or 1% or 2% or whatever else it might be, just find something and just let it live for a little bit. Give people a little bit more consistency.
I have an idea. I think on
Oh,
Mondays,
it's going to be so dumb. So dumb.
Mike's done.
can't even get it out.
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I still would say bring quarterfinals back, or separate the sport side of it. Separate the CrossFit Games season from the Open and affiliate season. And instead of trying to solve both things at once, you have quarterfinals, which anybody in the world can register for. You just pay more money to register for it. You don't need to qualify into it. It's just, this is the sport thing, and this is where there's going to be more standards, whatever, and figure out a way, and I don't have this way, but figure out a way to incentivize the stars of the sport and the best gyms in the world that have the biggest memberships to do the Open. Like, make it a affiliate driven thing separate from the sport. And I think then it's much easier to create that consistency, and it's much easier to say, like, all right, we got these two communities of people in our community. We got one who's like, I just do CrossFit to be fit, and I like showing up, and I like competition, and I don't really care that much if, you know, my squat was 1 inch to not depth, or like I dropped the bar a little bit early, but I'm in an affiliate, so no one cares, and I just keep going. There's that group. And then there's the other group who's like, all right, you set standards, you have a clock, we test 1RMs, we do this as a sport, and you can properly build the competition for both of those groups. And they already have the model that, like, Open, quarterfinal, semifinal kind of works. So you just say, take out the Open for that group and just let anybody seriously competitive pay more to go into a properly structured season right off the bat from stage one. And then you have this other thing that's more towards the affiliates. And I think that could be I don't know, there's just an idea to try to create some level of consistency and satisfying both of those groups.
I think you have to incentivize the elites to do the Open, because I think if all of them don't care about it, there will be a lot less.
But I'm saying
engagement.
incentivize them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, just take some of the revenue and make a bigger prize for the Open, right? If there's a money prize for it, all of the best competitors are probably going to do it. But in its current state right now, I know a lot of the best are just like, I'm just going to kind of do the Open. Sure. Like, I know they take it seriously because they don't want their name low on a leaderboard, but also they're like bigger focuses on those in-person comps and semifinals and other things because they've just been disincentivized. It's like, it's just a box they have to check. They're not really incentivized to do it.
But you also have to, if you're an elite athlete and you have Open, quarterfinals, semifinals, and games, that's a very long season. So do you really want to care that much about the Open? Like, that is a time for them to probably cruise through that in their season and not be at peak fitness. So if you look at the leaderboard already, how many elite athletes are peaking for the Open? Zero, right? And they're still at the top of the leaderboard. So I think that is going to happen anyway. There's the separation, but I don't really know without the people that probably cared the most were the ones that were either trying to qualify directly into a semifinal through the Open, or people who needed to be that top 2% master age groups and stuff like that. So it did actually incentivize those guys to probably
for the game season.
But like they describe the Open, they've always described the Open as the first thing is like it's the first step to qualifying for the games. And I don't think that will ever change, but just when the season gets longer and longer and there's more steps, like at least it got reduced to 3 weeks, that just makes it harder to like justify them caring at all.
Well, they did in the past have, and they removed it at some point, but there was a provision that if you won the games, you got an automatic bid to future games. And then at some point,
if you won the games,
if you won the games. So they've already kind of had a model to say like, well, it's not always the first step to qualify for the games because maybe you could qualify in other ways. And I think, I mean, unless all of this other stuff doesn't work in the market, which I find very unrealistic because a lot of it's already working. Like these competitions are really big. I think the sport is going to be big enough that if you want the stars to really participate in the CrossFit Games season and really enjoy it and crush it and whatever, they can't be competing for 5 straight months in it. It needs to just be like, hey, you're good enough and you've shown that you're good enough. Like, we want you here at the big show, like not you have to prove it every single year. If that is the case, I think it's just a different thing. It's not really a sport. It's just kind of like it is like more like an annual game show where like it's like survival of the fittest every time, which I don't think is conducive to long-term growth of the sport personally.
Isn't it similar to a preliminary qualifier for other sports where like maybe there's multiple rounds and like if it was a time trial, you have to get within a certain time, but it's a very loose for somebody who's elite. Like that's almost how I see it, where it's like you really literally just have to check the box, but you had to be in the 1%. So you had to be high enough. You had to do it hard enough and be good enough to get in that 1%, which is not easy, but for a games athlete, it probably is.
Yeah, but I think in other sports, they bypassed the first thing. Like people get buys through the first rounds of tournaments or, you know, they get automatic bids to a Diamond League race or something. So you're seeing their prelims, but their prelims are more akin to our semifinal or quarterfinals. It's not akin to the Open.
But I think that's the difference between CrossFit. It's not just about it being the professional sport. And that's, again, when we have this divergence of like, okay, do you want to treat this like the important part's the professional sport or the important part is the affiliates and the organization and the community? And I think it's the latter.
Yeah, I agree. But then they say, well, we want the elites to participate. And if they don't want to participate, they're like, you guys aren't supporting the affiliates. And it's like, all right, but they like also got to support their careers and all the competitions and other stuff too.
Well, they are
like, and their health.
They are like, I think them having to do it and being in the top 1%, I personally think is enough, like for them to have to do it, and they have to do it relatively well. You can't put in a score of 1.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it checks that box because it has them participating, and a lot of them too that have media, their own media and stuff. They've produced, tips and they're doing the workouts, or they have kind of their own rivalries. So there's some engagement there as well. So this year's interesting because CrossFit's in the process of selling the company, right? So
we'll change next year.
There is an ownership transition, and I think it is an opportunity for whoever the new owners end up being to take this feedback and look at and talk to athletes and organizations and affiliates, like what worked best in the last 5 years, or maybe there's a combination of something that could be used in the future. But to your point, if you did combine some of these things and make a new version of what worked best, it will also be new, right?
Yeah.
But
but I think new, if there's a structured consistency, like, hey, we're making a big change, but we're making this big change, and here's our vision for what we're doing, and here's where we're going. I think that alleviates some of the feeling of novelty without knowing. Like, knowing that it's going to sell, we can almost be sure that what Adam asked for in terms of consistency and knowing is like 0% chance, because whoever comes in to like take it over is most likely going to make a change.
They're going to have new ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
But hopefully what they'll bring to the table is also, here's what we want the Open to be. Here's what we want quarterfinals, semifinals, CrossFit Games to be.
Yeah.
And then here's also how we're going to serve the community outside of the sport. If they can do all of that, and they, like, whether it's new or not, just if you give us that vision, give us that North Star of what you want this to be, then all of a sudden I feel like that consistency and the uncertainty is like, both of those are addressed.
Yeah.
Because now we know if this is our goal, this is what we're working towards, all of us together, like the gyms and HQ and everybody else, like, we know what that vision is. It's so much easier to buy into it. Now it's like, all right, this might be new compared to everything we've seen in the past, but we know what you're trying to do. We trust that you're going to try and keep this going and keep that consistent. Makes it easier for me to want to buy into that.
I agree. And that we have some sort of feedback process as well in that. It's like, all right, you said this was the vision, but like, this is what we experienced at the, in the trenches.
Yeah.
Maybe you could take this and, wrap that into your feedback.
I think to sum up a lot of the other stuff, there's not two-way communication, and there's not transparency with what it is. Like, so many of the frustrations that we have, which would always sounds like we're complaining, is just like, we don't know what it is that you're trying to do. Like, what is the Open trying to do? We're not even sure if the Open knows what it's trying to do. Just let us know. Like, what's the goal of the Open? Is the goal of the Open to try and bring all the communities together to have one big thing that everybody can rally around? Is it really meant to be the first stage qualification for the elite athletes? If I know those things and I know what it is that it's trying to do, I have a much better idea about where I fit inside of that and whether I want to participate in it or not.
Good point. With that.
Yep.
Oh, we have a question. Oh,
we got a buyer.
Yeah.
What's your
CEO?
Chris is
start with 5 weeks of the Open.
5 weeks of the Open.
5 weeks of the Open and
bringing regionals back.
I miss regionals.
No. Let's go way back. How about some sectionals?
Oh,
Yeah, sectional.
Yeah. Good stuff.
You said
Territorial.
sectionals. I heard sanctionals.
No,
Because
sectionals.
those used to be a thing too.
Yeah.
a lot of the audience probably is like, what is a sectional?
All right, should we end with one
Not a couch.
most positive thing from the Open?
let's end with
And do we always complain or just often
I
complain?
think
I complain a lot.
criticism.
Yeah. It's
Short.
yeah. All right, we got to make short. Best thing in the Open.
My 4.0 star review.
Oh, there we go.
I actually really enjoyed the unloaded walking lunches and the workout.
You just like doing them, or you like watching?
It
people
made
was
that
a
work?
great
workout.
break,
I'm
yeah.
gonna go with Perrin. I'm gonna piggyback on
Yeah,
that one.
it
It
was
made the
nice.
workout way more tolerable.
I liked crapping on your guys' opinion of the lunges.
Adam's favorite part.
And I liked making fun of Mike about what did I make fun of you about in 25
not important.
No, my favorite part was judging Chris.
Oh yeah.
Cool to see him doing the Open workouts, and I think this was the first year that he beat Mike.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Carl Winslow.
13
Only took 13 years. Yeah, buddy.
Did it, man.
No, that
Did it.
bicep had nothing to do with it.
I know you paid that guy to Nancy Kerrigan my arm.
Yeah. In all seriousness, like, we provided, or I provided maybe my frustrations and constructive feedback, but I do think that we're very lucky that given everything that has happened, not just this past year at the games, but from Glassman exiting in 2020 to now, that this thing is still going on, that there's still media, that there's still athletes that really love to do it, that the affiliate was still having a bump in energy. So it was good, but I think that feedback is more like we all see that it could be better, and we want it to be better, and we want it to thrive, and we want the members to love doing it. And I just feel like that's why we're sharing the feedback, to make it better, not to tear it down.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's because we care.
Yeah.
It's because
Yeah.
we want to see
Yeah.
it. Like,
It's passion.
we're pretty invested in this. So
yeah. Cool. So thank you guys for putting it on and being here. Peace.
Later.